Imagine a country once at the heart of a global empire, now facing one of its most uncertain economic futures. That's the United Kingdom for you. But here's the big question. How did the UK get here? And what's next? Stick around, because today we'll uncover the twists and turns of Britain's economy, from its glorious past to its current challenges, and even its possible future. Did you know the UK once controlled over a quarter of the world's economy? Today, its share is less than 3%, and yet its influence persists in fascinating ways. Let's dive into this story that's not just about numbers, but the rise, fall, and reinvention of a global power, the golden age of the UK economy. First, let's rewind to the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution. The UK wasn't just leading, it was inventing the game. Railways, factories, steam engines, you name it. Here's an image of Victorian Britain, bustling cities, smokestacks, and endless innovation. Back then, the UK's economy was like the Silicon Valley of its time. This era wasn't just about machines. It was about global reach. The British Empire's vast network meant resources from India, Africa, and the Americas flowed into Britain. By 1870, the UK produced 23% of the world's industrial output. But why did this golden age matter so much? Well, this industrial boom made the UK incredibly wealthy, creating industries and technologies that shaped the modern world. Even today, you can trace so many global innovations back to British roots. For example, the steam engine and the telegraph were British inventions that changed everything from travel to communication worldwide. Speaking of dominance, have you ever wondered what could topple such a giant? Let's move to the cracks that began to form. The decline begins. Fast forward to the 20th century. 2 world wars drained the UK's wealth and resources. Imagine this, a country rebuilding its cities while losing its colonies one by one. By the mid-1900s, the British Empire was shrinking, and so was its economic dominance. World War I alone cost the UK an estimated £9.5 billion, equal to several years of GDP at the time. But the real turning point came after World War II. National debt soared to over 200% of GDP as the government focused on rebuilding. By 1947, the UK was forced to decolonize, starting with India. This marked a significant economic shift as markets and resources that fueled British industries were no longer under its control. Meanwhile, new global players like the United States and the Soviet Union were emerging. By 1950, the US economy was double the size of the UK's. Germany, too, rapidly rebuilt itself after the war, becoming a European economic powerhouse. The UK's industrial base also started to decline. Traditional industries like coal, steel, and shipbuilding struggled to compete with modernized production methods in other countries. By the 1970s, strikes, high unemployment, and inflation had turned Britain into what was often called the sick man of Europe. But decline doesn't mean defeat. The UK found a way to reinvent itself. Curious about how? Let's explore its transformation next. Reinvention through services. Picture London in the 1980s. Stock markets booming, flashy bankers everywhere, and a global financial hub in the making. This was the era when the UK shifted gears. Instead of heavy industries like coal and steel, it doubled down on services, banking, finance, insurance. Today, services make up over 80% of the UK's economy. London's financial district, known as the City, handles over $3 trillion in foreign exchange daily, more than any other city in the world. It's like the brain of the global financial system. But this reinvention wasn't just about finance. The UK also became a global leader in creative industries like advertising, film, and music. However, relying heavily on services comes with risks. The 2008 financial crisis exposed how vulnerable the UK's economy was to shocks in the banking sector. It also highlighted the growing economic divide between London, the UK's financial heart, and other regions. And speaking of shocks, let's talk about one of the biggest ones in recent history, Brexit. Brexit and its ripple effects. Brexit. Just the word sparks debates. But what does it really mean for the UK's economy? Imagine pulling out of a club you've been a member of for over 40 years. That's what Brexit did. It cut ties with the EU's single market, disrupting trade and creating uncertainty. British exporters scrambling to meet new rules, businesses facing delays, and even some companies relocating to Europe. By 2023, the UK's GDP was 4% smaller than it would have been if it had remained in the EU. One of the hardest hit sectors was manufacturing. Companies that relied on smooth supply chains, like the automotive industry, faced significant challenges. For example, Nissan's Sunderland plant, a major employer, saw production costs rise due to increased tariffs and delays. However, Brexit isn't just about losses. The UK is working on trade deals with countries like India, Australia, and Japan. The government is also focusing on building a more self-reliant economy. But the question remains, will these moves be enough to offset the challenges? But there's more to the story. What about the UK's future? That's where things get really interesting. The challenges ahead. Now, let's look forward. The UK is facing a perfect storm. High inflation, a cost of living crisis, and the aftershocks of the pandemic. By mid-2024, inflation was at 6.7%, and food prices had risen by over 19% year on year. But it's not all doom and gloom. Did you know the UK is a leader in green technology and renewable energy? Offshore wind farms in the North Sea generate over 25% of the UK's electricity. The UK also aims to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050, driving investments in clean tech and electric vehicles. Additionally, the UK's education and research sector remains a global powerhouse. Universities like Oxford and Cambridge attract top talent and contribute billions to the economy. The UK's tech industry is also thriving, with over 100 tech unicorns, startups valued at over $1 billion. It's like a new industrial revolution, but greener and smarter. The question is, will these industries grow fast enough to pull the UK out of its current struggles? The key question is, will the UK seize these opportunities, or will it stumble? Let's wrap this up. What's next for the UK? So, what's the verdict? The UK's economy is a mix of rich history, bold reinvention, and big challenges. From its industrial glory days to its modern financial might, it's a story of resilience and adaptation. But the future, that's still unwritten. Will the UK overcome its challenges and lead the way in innovation once again? Or will it struggle to find its place in a rapidly changing world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed,